Have you ever felt that you had empty hands? Whether in love, health, career, finance. We've likely all been there at some point in our life where we felt like there's just not enough. And yet, even though it feels like a dark night of the soul that we may be walking through, we know that there's light, and we know that we can get back to that light. And that's what Daniel, I think, was singing about this morning, is those empty hands for spirit to feel. So this month our series is The Amazing Grace of Abundance, and my talk today is, what do you think about prosperity? What do you think about prosperity? Shakespeare said nothing is right or either good or bad, but thinking makes it so. And we know that to be true, don't we? He's teaching metaphysical principles there, isn't he? Yeah. And our metaphysical statement, what we think about comes about. You've probably heard that little rhyme, what we think about comes about. Saying the same thing. So, what are you thinking on a regular basis? Many of us have been in this teaching for a long time, and we've learned to watch our thoughts, to monitor our thoughts, to think a little more affirmatively, and yet we slip, don't we? We can slip right back into those old thinking habits, the negativity, and remember the bracelets, the complaint free, right? Yeah, it's easy to slip back into complaining, isn't it? Yeah, I've caught myself on a few occasions complaining again, even though I graduated from that program. Yeah, we slip. We slip. We know that our thoughts are creative. We teach that in the Science of Mind. You've heard us say that before. We know we live in an abundant universe. And as I was working on this talk this week out my office door, I can see beautiful bougainvillea in bloom, and they just seem to always have those red, beautiful blossoms on them year round. And then there's there's really big pine trees. And I notice, particularly when it's windy, the plethora, the abundance of pine needles that fall from that tree. And if it's particularly windy, there may be branches and there may be pine cones that fall. A lot of them, right? And of course, who can not just love that beautiful yellow pollen that flies out in giant clouds, right? It's abundance in form. And we see that all around us, whether the stars above or the grains of sand on a single beach, much less all of the beaches of our planet. We see God's abundance, God's grace of abundance all around nature. But that observation, that looking, kind of stops at the boundary of our lives sometimes, doesn't it? Where it's difficult for us to see that application of grace in our own life, in our own lives. Ernest Holmes is the founder of the Centers for Spiritual Living. He's the author of The Science of Mind, which is a philosophy that we teach from. And he was very clear in his teaching that this is not a get-rich-quick scheme. Now, when he was writing this back in the 20s and 30s, there were a lot of scams. Go figure. A lot like what we have today. Wasn't the same technology. They're a little more advanced in technology today, but who all has had that wonderful spam scam email come in or the phone calls come in, and you know what it is. And now we've got this wonderful thing called ransomware. Oh my gosh, it's horrible stuff, isn't it? Yeah. But Holmes was clear that the Science of Mind teaching, particularly its prosperity principles, are not get rich quick. And we want to make sure that in teaching prosperity principles that we go deeper with them and recognize the deeper wisdom and truth about how to apply them in our lives. Okay? So the key, Reverend Lee told us last week, one of the keys to living prosperous is how worthy we feel about receiving it, right? We have a worthiness quotient for the level of prosperity that we're going to receive or allow into our lives. We have to feel worthy of its presence. Now, if you or someone who's not experienced a great deal of good in your life, or perhaps you're someone that would like to experience a more good in your life, the Science of Mind teaches us that we participate in the universal creative process, that we create in the same fashion that spirit does on the smaller scale. And we teach the creative process with a very simple example of the idea is the seed that is then planted into the soil or the law that then grows abundantly whatever it is we planted. And it doesn't matter what we planted though. That's the trick, right? If we plant good, good grows. If we plant not so good, if we plant fear, we plant unworthiness, that too grows, right? That's how the law works. The law doesn't really care. Just like the soil doesn't. If we plant carrot seeds, we get carrots. We're not going to get watermelons. Yes? All right, so it works the same way. It's a simple process. Everything begins with thought and becomes form. We've talked about that before. The forms in our thoughts become the forms in our lives. What are you thinking about? What are you thinking about? Do you ever stop and notice your thoughts? This week, as I was working on this talk, it was forefront in my mind to really be looking at and paying attention to what I was thinking. It's like, okay, what am I thinking? And it was amazing to me how frequently my thoughts would be wander off someplace. And it didn't matter what I was doing. If I was writing and creating, I would suddenly realize that I was way over here thinking about something else. If I was reviewing legal documents, I would have to go back and go, okay, I have no idea what that paragraph just said because I was thinking about something else. It happens very frequently. So it's important that we continue to bring back our thought to that which we really want to experience in our lives, rather than allowing our mind to just wander off willy-nilly. Are you noticing when your thoughts wander? And then what do? Reel them back in and bring them back to focus, bring them back to center. If you find yourself worrying, we call that negative prayer. If you're living in the past in regrets, if you're living in the future in fear, those are places that are not going to serve us. We need to live in the present moment to continue to bring our awareness back to the present. Now, one of my very favorite quotes in The Science of Mind comes from chapter 18, The Law of Attraction. And Ernest Holmes says, what we demonstrate today, tomorrow, and the next day is not as important as the tendency which our thought is taking, the dominant attitude of our mind. What is the tendency of our thinking? Is it positive? Is it curious? Is it affirmative in nature? Or is it cranky and grumpy and judgmental and negative? Whatever we're putting out in our thoughts, whatever we're putting out in our words and our actions is what is coming back to us. Daniel had a nice reading this morning in our meditation time about that what we put out is what comes back to us. So that's why it's very important to recognize the tendency of our thinking. And if it is negative, not serving us, then begin to shift and change that. Holmes goes on in this quote to say, if every day things are a little better, a little happier, more harmonious, more health-giving and joyous, if each day we're expressing more life, we're going in the right direction. That's good news, isn't it? If it's getting better and better and better, we're building on our life. This quote reminds me, it's a journey. It's not that sprint, it's a marathon. It's a long journey. But every day we are improving. We're getting better and better and better. Did anybody do that inventory we handed out in January? That inventory of your life? It was long, but it had a lot of questions that helped us to open up and look at the areas of our lives. And that's important for us to do, I think, sometimes, is to just sit down and take an inventory. You've probably heard people talk about evaluating your values and getting in touch with your values so you know what's important to you. And the same is true in that whole idea of an inventory of our lives. so that we can see if there are areas for room for improvement, if we're happy as a clam and everything's going our way. But there's a phrase that keeps haunting me that is, healthy things grow. So stagnation is not part of our nature. Growing and expanding is. Even if we've got a great life now, it can be better. Believe it or not, it can be better. Every day, a little better and better, right? A little happier every day. And imagine that joy as it spreads through you to your community. As Lee said in his prayer this morning, that we, just by our very presence, people are impacted because of the life and the joy that we are and that we bring. And that's what our expansion does, our expansion of consciousness does. I've been listening to a book. I've finally figured out how to work Audible. So I can find and listen to. I figured out how to slow it down so it's not talking so fast. And I'm actually absorbing it, so it's kind of cool. But I'm listening to a Napoleon Hill book, and it's not Think and Grow Rich. It's called How to Own Your Own Mind. How to Own Your Own Mind. And it's an interview with Napoleon Hill and Andrew Carnegie. And it's after some of the research that he did for Think and Grow Rich. And in it, Carnegie is discussing his success principles. And he continues to remind us throughout the book of the importance of a burning desire and keeping ourselves focused on it. Now, both of those can be hard to come by, can't they? I mean, sometimes life is just okay. We're happy. We're content. And a burning desire, I don't really have a burning desire, right? It can be that way sometimes, and that's okay. But let's talk about that a little bit more. Carnegie said in 1908, the power with which we think is mental dynamite, and it can be organized and used constructively for attainment of definite ends. If it is not organized and used through controlled habits, it may become a mental explosive that will literally blast one's hopes and achievements and lead to inevitable failure. Anybody ever sabotage themselves? Oh, yeah. That is that mental explosive, isn't it? Where we just implode over something because we've hit our own wall. It's gotten too good. It's gotten too whatever. We're about to cross a threshold of transformation and we're terrified. And so we implode. It's human nature. You're not alone if you've ever done that. Carnegie was a very amazing, successful immigrant, philanthropist, business person. I don't know if you know his history. He moved here with his family at the age of 12 from Scotland, began working immediately doing various things until he formed a steel company. He sold the steel company, was the richest man in the world. In his last, I think they said 10 years of his life, he gave away the equivalent of billions of dollars. And was just a wonderful philanthropist after he sold the company, and encouraged other business people to do so. And there is actually a spike in philanthropic giving during that time frame. Not only his money that went in, but all these other business people that were espousing his principles and were doing the same thing. So very interesting. Very interesting. And he built buildings and things all over the world, not just Carnegie Hall, but he's got a school in The Hague and other things that he's done. So pretty fascinating. But he was describing the creative process also, wasn't he? Taking the idea, the thought to form. And we've talked about it before, how we live in this beautiful system of creation. We have everything we need available to us, and we get to individualize it to our own desires. We get to direct this law of our lives for the experience that we want to have. And as he's talking about the mental dynamite, that's the trained thought. And whether it's an explosive that's creating damage or it's something that's blasting away the blockages is up to us. It's up to us. Are we clearing the way or are we creating cave-ins? It's up to us. So in the science of mind, we teach a tool called mental equivalence. Anybody heard of that? Did a workshop a couple months ago about it with the law of attraction. There's a whole chapter on it in the science of mind. And as I've been working with it in more depth this week, I think it's named incorrectly because I think we teach it at the surface level, and that's not the point. It should really be the subconscious equivalent. Because remember, we've learned that 95% of our life is run by the subconscious. And so we have to embody these things and get them into our subconscious in order for them to be manifest in our life. And so a mental equivalent is really this subconscious equivalent. We choose it mentally, but then it's got to get embodied into the subconscious in order to become effective. So what is it? How do I get it? And what do I do with it when I get it? Right? Those are our questions. A mental equivalent is more than just a picture in our minds. It's more than a picture on our minds. It's more than a vision board. It must become this burning desire, this thing that becomes a part of us. And I think that's what Carnegie was trying to teach us back then, is the burning desire just simply means that it's always there. It's always there with us. It becomes a part of who we are. Let's use an example. How many would like more money? Do you have a burning desire for more money? Is it forefront on your mind? You eat, sleep, drink, dream about it all the time? Little green pieces of paper with numbers and dead presidents and germs? No, we don't want money. We want the freedom we believe the money will buy us, don't we? We want the vacation. We want the house or the car, or to do good work, to go to Africa and build wells, or give to wonderful organizations who are doing amazing things in the world. That's what we want, right? Yeah, we want to do good with what we believe money will do because we live in that system too. We live in this economic system that requires that. Sort of. Maybe. Maybe not. Can we experience those things without money? Yeah. Yeah, we can. Anybody ever won anything? Free trip. Penny's going to a great event. Won great tickets. She didn't have to write out a check for that, give over those little green men. Yeah, so it's possible. It's possible. Couple stories. A book that we read several years ago, Genevieve Baron. She was the only student of Thomas Troward. Troward would not take on students. He was a teacher and lecturer, but he would not take on students. And she decided she wanted to be his student. I think it was 1918. It was earlier in the 19th century. She lived in New York, a single woman. And she said, I'm going to study with Thomas Troward. So she checked into it. $20,000 back then was needed for her to travel by ship to England, find accommodations, live there long enough to work with him. She didn't have $20,000. But she set her mind to it using metaphysical principles and ended up with $20,000 and went and knocked on his door. And he says, I don't see students. Go away, little lady. She didn't give up. She kept knocking and kept knocking and kept knocking. So he finally took her on as a student. But her goal was not the money, was it? Her goal was Thomas Troward and studying with him, and she overcame every obstacle to achieve that goal. Her mental equivalent was the study with him. Anybody ever heard the story of David and Goliath? A little Bible story. Little David. Goliath! Goliath is just wreaking havoc on the people. And the king says, okay, whoever kills this giant and gets him out of my hair can marry my daughter, the princess. David goes, I will. And they're going, David? He goes, I'll do it, right? I've got a slingshot. I'll do it. Okay, buddy, go for it. Do I get the princess? You're sure I get the princess if I do? I get the princess, right? Do I get the princess if I do this? Okay, great. You're dead. Yay, I got the princess. His goal, his mental equivalent was the princess. Had nothing to do with being a fighter, a warrior, taking on this giant of a person. It was his desire for the princess that gave him what he needed to take on Goliath. Ernest Holmes in Love and Law says there is something inside us which equals the thing that we want to do, that will support us in achieving the thing that we want to do, the burning desire that we have, the subjective equivalent that we have placed in our subconscious. A mental equivalent is having within us a desire and being willing to take the necessary steps to get there, like David and like Genevieve did. She raised money to get herself where she needed to be because it wasn't about the money. It was just a tool to get her there. It's not about the money for us. Money's the tool to get us on the vacation, to get us to doing good in the world, to getting us to contributing to organizations that do good in the world. So now that we have this mental equivalent, what do we do with it? Well, we've got to embody it in the subjective. We've got to embody that in the subjective to where that becomes a part of who we are, that it's with us at all times. And we wake up with it. We go to sleep with it. We think about it. We write about it. We are immersed in it. We learn about it. We know that prosperity principle. We teach it all the time with our green envelopes every Sunday. What we focus on expands. And the same is true with your mental equivalent, your subjective equivalent. When you know what your desire is and you continue to focus on it, it can't help but come forward. But what if we just don't have a burning desire about anything? Life is good. Life is okay. I'm content. I don't have a burning desire. What about those times? What about those days? Life's good enough, yeah? I think a very profound question in those moments is, how do I want to grow? How do I want to grow? Because remember, healthy things grow. How do you want to grow? How do you want to increase your consciousness, your awareness? How do you want to be a beneficial person on this planet, a beneficial presence on this planet? How do you want to grow? And when we ask questions like that, Spirit has a tendency to fill those empty hands, doesn't it? Just like Daniel sang, filling those empty hands of not knowing what our burning desire is. Doesn't have to be big. We don't have to create the world's biggest steel company. We could, but we don't have to. Once we have the desire, we plant the mental equivalent of the seed into the law, and the law aligns all that we need to achieve it. It brings it to us. Anybody had the experience of saying yes to something and then, oh my gosh, look at all this stuff that just happened? That's how it works. When we say yes, the universe brings forward all that we need to support that yes. We simply stay focused and take inspired action. So let's summarize what we've been talking about, and then we'll look at our practicing the principles real quick, and then it'll be your turn, okay? So practicing the principles is the Monday newsletter that I send out for you that's got a summary of today's talk. It's got the practicing the principles in more detail so that you can apply these principles in your life throughout the week. If you'd like to sign up for that, you can use the QR code. You can email me, or you can just sign up in the lobby, and we'll get you on the list for that distribution. So we first know the desire, and we refine it beyond the surface. We take it from that surface level and we begin to embody the deeper meaning. We start to tear it apart. And that's when money becomes the tool of creation rather than the subject of our desire. And then we allow universal interference. Universal interference, right? Those God winks, those serendipitous things that happen, those coincidences that happen. And we pay attention, we're tuned in because we recognize everything that's coming to support that desire. Peace becomes a way of life for us rather than something we really wish everybody else would practice. It starts within us. And all of our relationships expand to become more loving, including the one with ourselves, as we call in that special one. So once we have a definite desire, we begin to feel into the experience of it. We begin to feel into it. Baran felt into her training with trials. She desired that so much. She felt it. And the universe answered those feelings. So we have to get it to that point. We use the power of our imagination to more deeply embody the experience. So let's look at some practicing the principles and put some details around that. And I have changed the name since I gave Joe the slots and I forgot to tell Joe. So, okay. Number 1, the sound of silence. Spend time in the silence listening for your inner wisdom. Spend time in the silence. What would I really love to have, be, or do? What would I really love to have, be, or do? You can walk, meditate, vision, and journal a lot. Open up the creative circuits that are available to you. These practices that we teach support us in a closer walk with the divine. That's the only reason we teach them, is to help us to have a closer walk with the divine. If you don't have a definite desire, it may take time to discover what that is. Ask yourself again, what do I want? How do I want to grow? How do I want to grow? And be patient with yourself. Doesn't have to happen overnight. Number 2, a picture's worth a million words. Use the internet or some other resource to search for a visual representation of your mental equivalent. This adds another layer of the experience for you to where you can begin to embody it more. Print it, look at it often. Write about what's happening in the picture. Write the story. We did a book last year, I believe, about writing your personal business plan, personal statement. And what was it called, Bev? You remember? The path, mission. Thank you. Yes, the mission statement, personal mission statement. And it was that. It was writing out our life story the way that we envisioned it going forward. And so write about that experience, what you believe it to be, what's happening in the picture, what's happening with you when you experience that. You can use Mary Morrissey's phrase, I'm so happy and grateful now that. That's a great way to start. I'm so happy and grateful now that. Number 3 is use the law. Use spiritual mind treatment or affirmative prayer to affirm and accept this picture of your life. Write your prayer, speak your prayer, call a practitioner for prayer to know this truth with you. Number 4 is grow it. Healthy things grow. The more you look at your picture, the more familiar you will be and accepting of it you will be. Now, I work with some guys that used to buy farms, and they always said that as soon when you buy the farm and you drive on for the first time, take pictures and notes of everything that's wrong, because in 2 weeks you won't see any of it, because we become desensitized to it. We become desensitized. I'm remodeling my house right now, and I'm very sensitive to every new thing that's going in, and I'm paying really close attention to everything that's going in. But I guarantee you in 2 weeks, I will not notice it any longer at that level of detail. That's how our minds work. We tune out, right? So when that tuning out starts happening with your new burning desire, expand it, grow it. Find another picture that's even more opulent than that one was, that's even bigger, that's deeper, richer, more exciting, because you're expanding your consciousness. And so expand it a little more and a little more and a little more. All right. Ernest Holmes explained that a mental equivalent is not just an idea, a thought, a belief, or an understanding. It is the subjective embodiment of an idea, which is so accepted that the mind can no longer deny it. Once we embody clear mental equivalents of what we truly desire, the demonstration is automatic. So it is. And now it's your turn. Penny, all right.
Okay, so my focus lately, like for the past, 6 weeks, is my retirement. and when it's going to happen and what I'm going to do after. And the win is where I'm working at now. I'm learning and growing. And as soon as I get that completed in the way it needs to be, then this other investment is going to pay off. And so then I'm going to retire earlier. And I already have my like 65th birthday plan. And then I have, after my retirement date, I have what I'm going to do after I retire. So I already know what's going to happen. So it's really cool. I'm so excited.
Nice.
Yeah.
Good for you. That's awesome. All right.
All right, I have a question. So, what if you have multiple desires? Because then envisioning and embodying all those, by the time you get through all those, like sometimes it's overwhelming. So, do you pick the first one? Or I just read that book by Genevieve, and she said something about pick a word and repeat the word over and over and over and over again until it's true. So, my question is, if you have multiple desires, can you embody, instead of the actual thing you're desiring, can you embody a feeling surrounding all of that and make it just what you want to feel if all of what you desire was happening? Or do you have to mentally picture it, mentally see yourself there, mentally go into whatever aspect of your life you're wanting to change? Or can you say, this is how I would feel if all of these things were happening, and just imagine that? Because I've heard it both ways, that you can, or that it's better to see the picture. You're not thinking of it, but thinking from it, like that. So, anyways, that's my question.
So I would say all of that's up to you. If you can hold all of that, and not have it be scattered and separate, and you can focus on a central idea, and if you get so refined on that central idea, I'm going to make it up. Let's say it's health, and we've got a problem with our foot, a problem with our knee, a problem with our heart, a problem with our back, and we've got all this stuff going on, and those are my desires, is to heal all those things. But if we can elevate that to just health and hold health and how I feel when everything's in perfect alignment and operating and working the same, if we're talking about, I want to manifest wealth, I want to manifest health, I want to manifest this, if you can do it, I want to hear about it. I can't do that. So I focus on one area, two areas maybe at a time. Otherwise, I get scattered. And all of my energy is not where it needs to be, which is getting that in the subjective. Once I get it in the subjective, I mean, we know how hard it is to get stuff out of there, right? Once I get it in the subjective, then I can move on to the next one because I know it's going to manifest automatically for me. Does that help at all?
I read somewhere where this woman, there was a story, and she said that all she said to herself was, this is truly amazing. Something wonderful is happening to me now. And so it's like all encompassing. But that does the same thing. I've tried it, and it's like it scatters because it's not. But that would be great.
Well, if we're talking about grace, which we are, and the grace of God is always outpouring and flowing to and through us, it's up to us to receive. So if we can get all of our mental blocks out of the way that is limiting that, then we open to God's grace and we say something wonderful is happening through me right now, and I receive it all. But we got to own it. It's got to get in our subconscious that we always expect something good. We have no fear. We have no reservation. We have no limitation. We are just wide open to receive God's good, no matter what it looks like. It's terrifying, isn't it? It's like, what? Give up control? Who's next? Oh, come on. Nothing? No. I left a bunch of stuff out. No?
What if there's multiple things that you're interested in doing? Like in my career, there's there's a couple of things that I'm interested in doing. How do I envision both of them and see which one happens, or do I pick one and then go that way?
Pray.
For direction?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Well, what happens sometimes is that when we get to the point where we really recognize that truly we live in the grace of God and all of the good is available to me, we can react like a kid in the candy store. Not saying that you are, but we can react that way, like I want it all and I want it now, rather than allowing ourselves to catch up with ourselves, so to speak. And so taking those smaller steps and allowing ourselves to get cohesive about it and recognizing that good is good no matter what. And I trust in my own divinity, my soul's wisdom to call forth to me the best possible experience for me. I know that I am whole, perfect, and complete. I know that I am unified and one with God. So therefore, I can experience this good at this level that I want. And get it in. It's kind of like calling in the one, where narrow it down to three things, three qualities of the life you want to live. Pick three qualities and continue to refine those three qualities of the life you want to live. And then everything, when you say yes to that, everything required, the universe will supply you to live those qualities. And it will outpicture in relationship and in career and find everything. It'll outpicture in all of that once you get clear on that. Damita.
So I started thinking about that inventory form that you were talking about in January, and I started it, but then I think it was a little overwhelming. But I do see the value in inventory. I think that it's really important to sometimes take a personal inventory and to look at things. And then the reading today from Ernest Holmes' Tendency, which our thought is taking. And I was really thinking about, and it also says the dominant attitude of our mind, that when I'm sort of thinking about my life, what I want, and I try not to focus so much on what I don't want and what is present that is not my favorite. I can really just look at what my attitude is, but I'm really interested in that form again. So maybe you can resend it and I can give it another shot.
All right.
And finish it.
All right.
I was excited to hear you said that you're reading that book, Napoleon Hill's How to Own Your Own Mind. That was one of the first, about 5 years ago, that's kind of brought me into where I'm at today, being here, and the whole idea of metaphysics. And but I don't know if it's helpful. One of the famous quotes of Dale Carnegie is, "Put all your eggs in one basket and watch the basket." Yeah. So it's there's a lot of the teachings that have brought me here today that all kind of keep directing the importance of having that one thing, and that if you're going to be very good at something or manifest something, you got to be kind of get your focus on that, and then the other things will, like somebody like Dale Carnegie, that he had a lot of other people that were helping him manage all the different things. He didn't know how to make steel, but he had other people that did, like so many. Anyway, that's all pass.
Yeah. All right. Thank you, Mark. Yeah, science is proving that multitasking doesn't work, because we're diluting our focus so much on any one thing that we're not doing anything well. And so that comes back to Carnegie's advice of pick one thing and focus on that. Yeah. Valerie.
Thank you, Jill. I think a week or two ago you had a visioning, and I missed that, unfortunately. Are you going to revisit that again in the near future? Because I think this all ties in together here.
It does.
Yeah.
It does. We do visioning once a quarter right now, but if folks would be interested in a visioning, we could do one after service one Sunday. So just sign up and we'll have a visioning after service one Sunday and spend probably an hour. And
I see two of us so far.
All
Anybody
right.
else? Thank you.
You bet. All right. Well, it is 11 o'clock, so unless somebody has got one more thing. All right, let's move on. Thank you all very much for sharing your thoughts. I so appreciate you. It's always fun to do. And let's anchor this whole thing in some prayer this morning. What do you think? Yes. Saying yes to life. Just recognizing that there is one power and presence that is in, through, and as all, and that power and presence is God. It is the one life, the one mind. It is the all that is. It is that which has created all, from the largest to the smallest and everything in between. It is infinite love and intelligence, wisdom, joy, peace, harmony. And all of that, all of it, is right here present right now in Scottsdale Center for Spiritual Living, in, through, and as each one of us, as individualized expressions of it. We are the love, the joy, the peace, the prosperity, the harmony, the intelligence, the wisdom. We are all of that, individualized and unique expressions of the divine as we move about, live, move, and have our being in the divine as expressions of it, the hands and feet of it. We are the form of its thought. And so knowing that unity, that wholeness, that perfection that each of us is, I speak my word for and about each of us now, knowing, claiming, and accepting in this moment that truth of our being, that we are the form of God's thought, that we are manifestations of that divine and infinite abundance, that prosperity, that unconditioned love. And I know that each of us has within us a desire for growth and expansion, whether that's on the surface, we know exactly what it is, or whether it's buried deep in our soul as our soul's journey and mission in life. I know that each of us has ready and easy access to it now as it bubbles to the top in such joy this morning, and that we move forward with a divine and sacred yes for its manifestation, for those are desires of the divine, thoughts of the divine, to be formed through us and as us. I know this day, for anyone that has anything on their heart that they seek prayer for, that healing is revealed, that truth is expressed, that financial flow is abundant, that love is unconditioned, and that all needs and desires are met with clarity, quality, joy. How grateful I am for this knowing, for knowing the manifestation of this prayer, for knowing the truth of our being, and for knowing that the word spoken is the word made manifest. As I release this into the action and activity of law, and knowing that it is done, it is so, we affirm this together by saying, and so it is.